The illusion of easy love in today's world. Love seems easier than ever. With a swipe, a tap, or a like, you can connect with someone new, spark a conversation, and begin something that resembles a relationship. Technology has removed the barriers of time, distance, and even fear. Dating apps give us access to thousands of potential partners, social media allows constant connection, and everything from messaging to meeting feels instant. On the surface, it feels like a dream. But underneath this seamless access lies a paradox. People are lonelier than ever. Relationships are shorter. Commitment is rare. Intimacy feels hollow. And many quietly ask themselves, if love is so easy now, why does it feel so hard to keep? The truth is, what we've gained in convenience, we've lost in depth. Love, once rooted in time, patience, and effort, has been rebranded as a product. Something we acquire. Something that must entertain us. Something that must feel perfect or it must end. This is the illusion of easy love. It promises joy without discomfort, connection without vulnerability, and closeness without work. But love has never been effortless. Real love, the kind that transforms, heals, and lasts, demands something deeper. In our pursuit of speed, we've sacrificed stillness. In our pursuit of perfection, we've rejected the imperfect nature of real human connection. And in chasing the next best thing, we've forgotten how to stay. We've confused attention with affection, matching with meaning, chemistry with compatibility. And the result is a generation that's flooded with options, but starving for real connection. To begin understanding what's broken in modern love, we must first let go of the fantasy that it should be easy. Love was never meant to be instant. It was meant to be real. And real things take time. 2. Connection without intimacy. We are more connected than ever before, yet never have we felt so emotionally detached. We live in a world where people can talk all day without ever really saying anything. Messages fly across the globe in seconds. Notifications buzz constantly in our pockets, and every platform urges us to stay in touch. But the kind of connection we crave, the one that makes us feel seen, safe, and truly understood, remains heartbreakingly rare. That's because modern connection often skips the very things intimacy is built on: presence, vulnerability, and silence. Instead of being with someone, we text while distracted. We FaceTime while scrolling. We listen just enough to respond, not to understand. Technology has enabled us to communicate faster, but it's eroded the quality of how we relate. We've begun mistaking quantity for depth. We think more messages mean more love. More likes mean more worth. More attention means more connection. But love doesn't work that way. It has never worked that way. You cannot substitute presence with emojis. You cannot build trust with filtered selfies. You cannot share your soul in stories that disappear in 24 hours. Real intimacy requires slowness. It demands discomfort. It invites us to show up without performing, to listen without reacting, to stay even when it feels awkward. But in a world of curated identities and digital masks, being emotionally naked feels terrifying. So we stay on the surface. We flirt, but don't reveal. We touch, but don't open. We connect, but don't feel. This is the great tragedy of modern love. We are always in touch, but rarely in tune. If we want to rebuild intimacy, we must learn to disconnect in order to truly connect, not from people, but from distraction, performance, and fear. Because presence is the rarest and most radical form of love in today's world. 3. The ego in the age of swipe modern dating has become a performance, not a pursuit of intimacy. Profiles are curated like personal brands. Bios are written to impress, and photos are carefully selected for maximum attraction. We swipe not to discover someone's soul, but to consume their image. And in this world of rapid judgment and endless options, the ego thrives. It feeds on attention, matches, compliments, and the illusion of desirability. But the ego doesn't want to love, it wants to win. It wants validation, not vulnerability. It seeks admiration, not understanding. And so we build entire romantic identities, not around who we are, but around what we think others want to see. We learn to attract, but not to connect. We chase being desired, not being known. The result is a dating culture that feels like a game, where intimacy is traded for strategy and authenticity is sacrificed for attention. We fear rejection so deeply that we create personas to avoid it, forgetting that the only love worth having is the one that embraces us without the mask. But here's the paradox: the very thing we crave and love is the one thing the ego cannot provide: depth. The ego resists discomfort. It avoids accountability. It fears being seen in weakness. But love demands all of these. Real love begins where the ego ends. It begins when we stop trying to impress and start trying to understand. It begins when we admit we don't have it all together, when we share the parts we're ashamed of, when we open ourselves to the risk of being hurt. That's not weakness. That's courage. And yet, in a world where swipes are easier than self-awareness, where performance is more rewarding than presence, and where the ego is constantly fed by algorithms, this kind of courage is rare. If we want to love differently, we must quiet the ego and awaken the soul. Because the soul doesn't care about being seen, it cares about being felt. 4. The collapse of commitment. Commitment used to be the foundation of love. It was the structure within which love could grow, deepen, and endure. But in the age of infinite options and instant gratification, commitment feels like a burden, not a blessing. We've been conditioned to believe that something better is always out there. A more attractive partner, a more exciting connection, a more effortless relationship. So instead of nurturing what we have, we look for escape. We treat relationships like apps. When they stop working the way we want, we delete and replace. But here's the truth that no one wants to admit. Every relationship, no matter how perfect it seems at first, will eventually demand work. There will be boredom, misunderstandings, conflict, disappointment. These aren't signs of failure, they're signs of reality. And in the past, we accepted this. We knew that love wasn't supposed to feel perfect all the time. That commitment meant showing up even when the feelings faded. But today, feelings have become the compass, and the moment they change, we assume we've chosen wrong. This mindset has collapsed the very idea of staying. We don't stay through discomfort. We don't stay through change. We don't stay long enough to witness the depth that only time can reveal. And so we miss the most profound parts of love, not because they don't exist, but because we never stick around long enough to find them. True commitment isn't about sacrificing freedom. It's about choosing depth over novelty. It's the decision to build something that can weather the seasons, not just bloom in spring. It's not glamorous. It's not always exciting, but it is the only path to something real. In a culture obsessed with upgrades, lasting love is a revolutionary act. And those who choose it aren't settling, they're transcending. 5. The fear of vulnerability. At the heart of every deep relationship lies vulnerability. The willingness to be seen not just in our strength, but in our fear, our doubt, our mess. And yet, in a world that idolizes self-sufficiency, being vulnerable feels dangerous. We're taught to be independent, to never need anyone, to always appear strong. Admitting we need love, that we crave connection, that we're afraid of being left, that feels like weakness. So we hide. We pretend. We keep our armor on. And in doing so, we deprive ourselves of the very closeness we long for. Because intimacy is not built through perfection, it's built through exposure. Through the moments when we risk rejection to speak our truth. Through the spaces where we let someone see the parts we've been taught to shame. But modern culture doesn't prepare us for this. We're fluent in surface conversation but illiterate in emotional expression. We know how to flirt but not how to reveal. We know how to impress but not how to confess. And so our relationships remain shallow, not because we don't feel deeply, but because we're too afraid to show it. We build walls instead of bridges. We chase connection while avoiding the discomfort that makes it real. But vulnerability is not a flaw. It's not a liability. It's the birthplace of trust, empathy, and intimacy. It's where real love begins, not the love that performs, but the love that holds. When we dare to be vulnerable, We invite others to do the same. We create a space where masks fall away and something authentic can emerge. Yes, there is risk. Yes, it might hurt. But nothing meaningful ever comes without the possibility of pain. And maybe the true danger is not in being vulnerable, but in never being truly known. 6. Real love is boring, and that's beautiful. Modern culture has taught us to expect love to be exhilarating, passionate, and endlessly stimulating. We've been sold the myth that true love feels like fireworks every day, that it should be intense, dramatic, and cinematic. So when our relationships begin to feel ordinary, when the excitement fades, when routines set in, when passion becomes quiet, we panic. We wonder if we're with the wrong person. We question whether we've fallen out of love. But what if the problem isn't the relationship? What if it's the expectation? Real love doesn't look like the movies. It's not a constant high. It's a quiet presence, a shared routine, a deep comfort in knowing someone is there. It's morning coffee and tired conversations. It's showing up after an argument. It's staying when there's nothing glamorous to stay for. And yes, sometimes it's boring. But boring doesn't mean broken. In fact, it often means stable, secure, safe. And in a world addicted to stimulation, that kind of love is revolutionary. We are so used to chasing highs that we forget the beauty of grounding. We think love should always feel new, forgetting that true intimacy only grows through familiarity. That the most profound connection isn't found in the thrill of novelty, but in the safety of being known. Real love doesn't demand to be entertained. It asks to be nurtured. It's not about constant excitement. It's about quiet resilience. The couples who endure are not the ones who never get bored. They're the ones who learn to embrace the boredom, to find meaning in the mundane, to choose each other again and again, even when nothing feels magical. Because the magic, it turns out, isn't in the grand gestures, it's in the ordinary moments we stop taking for granted. 7. Attachment and repetition. Many of our struggles in love don't begin in the relationship itself. They begin long before, in childhood, in our earliest bonds, in the emotional blueprints we inherit without realizing. Attachment theory reveals that how we love as adults is shaped by how we first experience safety, attention, and affection. If our needs were met inconsistently, we may grow up anxious, constantly fearing abandonment, craving closeness, and needing constant reassurance. If our emotions were dismissed or overwhelmed, we may become avoidant, keeping people at a distance, resisting intimacy, and equating independence with strength. These patterns aren't choices. They're survival strategies. And unless we become aware of them, we repeat them. Over and over. With different partners, but the same pain. We mistake familiarity for fate. We're drawn to people who trigger our wounds, not because we enjoy the pain, but because on some deep level, it feels like home. And then we call it chemistry. We confuse chaos with passion. We call it love, but it's reenactment. This is why so many relationships feel like déjà vu. Why the same arguments keep happening. Why we fall for the same type, even when we know they're wrong for us. It's not a failure of judgment, it's a failure of healing. Real love requires self-awareness. It requires the courage to look inward, to ask, what am I carrying into this relationship that isn't about the other person? It requires us to stop blaming our partners for wounds they didn't cause, to stop expecting someone else to fix what we refuse to face. And it invites us to choose differently, to break the pattern, to love not from our wounds, but from our wisdom. Because healing doesn't just change how we feel, it changes who we choose, how we show up, and what we're willing to accept. Without it, love becomes repetition. With it, love becomes freedom. 8. Love as a skill, not a spark. We grow up believing that love is something that happens to us. A magical force. A spark. A destiny. We wait for it. We hope for it. We believe that when it's right, it will feel effortless. But this belief, though romantic, is deeply misleading. Because love is not a feeling, it's a skill. And like any skill, it requires intention, attention, and practice. The problem is, Most people enter relationships with no training, no understanding of emotional regulation, communication, or repair. We expect ourselves to navigate intimacy without ever having learned how to handle discomfort, conflict, or fear. And so when the initial passion fades, when misunderstandings arise, when the relationship demands something deeper, we panic. We think something's wrong. We think love is gone. But love hasn't left. It's simply asking to evolve. Infatuation is effortless. It's driven by biology, hormones, and novelty. It doesn't ask for maturity. But real love, the kind that endures, asks for everything. It asks us to show up when it's inconvenient, to listen when we'd rather defend, to give when we feel empty. This isn't a sign that love is broken, it's a sign that love is beginning. The spark may ignite the connection, but only skill can sustain it. This is why some of the strongest relationships aren't between those who feel the most in love, but between those who know how to love, who've learned the rhythms of repair, who've practiced the art of staying, who've developed the emotional muscles to hold space for someone else's pain without losing themselves. Love is not something we fall into, it's something we build. And every choice we make, how we respond, how we speak, how we hold space, lays a brick in that foundation. To love well is to learn how to love. And that's not a weakness, it's wisdom. 9. Building love in a broken culture. It's easy to believe that love is failing because people are failing. That we're too selfish, too distracted, too damaged to love well. But perhaps the problem isn't who we are, it's what we've been taught. We live in a culture that rewards speed, convenience, and instant results, where we're trained to optimize everything: our bodies, our careers, our routines, but never our capacity for intimacy. We're told to chase personal freedom above all else, but not how to balance freedom with responsibility. We learn to succeed, but not to stay. To communicate, but not to connect. To want love, but not to build it. The systems around us, media, marketing, technology, constantly reinforce the idea that love should be easy, exciting, and always fulfilling. So when it's not, we assume it's broken. But maybe love isn't broken. Maybe it's just been buried under a culture that doesn't know how to hold it. Real love thrives in conditions that our world rarely encourages: slowness, patience, presence, resilience. It requires values that are countercultural: staying instead of leaving, listening instead of reacting, accepting instead of fixing. It asks us to slow down in a world that tells us to move faster, to go deep when everything urges us to keep it light, to choose meaning over convenience. Building love today means resisting the noise. It means creating space mentally, emotionally, spiritually for another person to exist beside you, not as a project to fix or a role to fill, but as a whole being to witness and walk beside. It means turning toward instead of away, repairing instead of replacing, choosing again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because what makes love powerful is not that it's perfect, but that it's chosen in an imperfect world. And that choice, made daily, is what turns love from a fleeting feeling into a foundation we can stand on. 10. The greatest love of all: when all illusions fall away, when the stories of romance and the myths of perfection no longer hold us. What remains is this: love is not something we find, it's something we create. It is not a prize to win, nor a feeling to chase, but a way of being that we cultivate through patience, presence, and choice. The greatest love of all is not the one that sweeps you off your feet, but the one that grounds you, the one that grows with you, the one that stays not because it's always easy, but because it's real. We are not broken because we struggle in love. We struggle because we were never taught how to love. No one showed us how to navigate silence without fear, how to stay present during discomfort, how to accept another without losing ourselves. But we can learn. We can unlearn. We can build something deeper than what the world has modeled for us. Love, in its truest form, asks for everything. It asks us to slow down, to show up, to soften. It doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't need to be perfect to be lasting. It only needs to be chosen over and over. In the mundane, in the mess, in the stillness. The real revolution is not in falling in love, but in staying there, in showing up when the feelings fade, in choosing growth over comfort, in building something sacred in a culture that treats everything as disposable. If you've made it this far, if something in this message has stirred something quiet inside, you don't ignore it. Reflect on it. Share it. Let it shift something in how you show up in love. And if this resonated with you, if it opened a new perspective or helped you feel less alone, share it with someone you care about. Leave a comment and tell us how your understanding of love has changed. Subscribe to join us in exploring more of these quiet truths. And most of all, keep showing up for love, for depth, for yourself.